A 37-year-old treasure hunter named Cole Matthews was exploring the flooded caverns beneath the Appalachian foothills when he found something that defied every law of nature. Deep inside a cave partially submerged in icy water, Cole spotted a golden crown, floating, motionless, untouched by time or decay. No one could explain how it got there, and even stranger, why it hovered, just inches above the waterline, as if waiting. When Cole reached out and placed it on his head, the water around him roared to life, spiraling and pulling him under with a force that seemed almost alive. He managed to escape, but not before realizing he touched something that perhaps was never meant to be found. And now, the crown is missing again. Would you dare to wear it? Subscribe for more unbelievable discoveries, and decide for yourself what secrets still lie buried beneath. Cole Matthews wasn't the type to chase fairy tales. At 37, he had already learned the hard way that most legends faded under scrutiny. A former geologist turned cave diver and artifact hunter, Cole was known among a quiet circle of explorers and thrill-seekers for his methodical, no-nonsense approach. His base of operations was a modest cabin near the Tennessee side of the Appalachian foothills, a region riddled with ancient limestone tunnels, hidden springs, and unexplored sinkholes. He knew the land and water better than most. He respected both, and feared neither. That morning had been ordinary. The forecast warned of slight rain, but the skies remained stubbornly clear. Cole had been planning this dive for months, guided by a series of hand-drawn maps left behind by an old spelunker who'd gone missing decades ago. The local legends whispered of a submerged chamber, older than anything built by human hands. Most considered it local superstition, just another backwoods myth. Cole didn't. With his suit secured and oxygen levels checked, he paddled a narrow inflatable raft across a secluded forest spring, nestled deep within a rock basin. The entrance was almost invisible, half submerged under jagged outcrops, concealed by vines and moss. It was a place few ever saw and fewer returned from. He exhaled slowly, lowered his mask, and slipped into the water. The temperature dropped instantly. Cole's breath caught in his throat as he descended, flashlight slicing through the thick green gloom. The further he went, the more the noise from the surface disappeared. It was like stepping into another world, one where time didn't matter and nothing made a sound. At first, the cave walls were familiar, rough limestone, sediment deposits, signs of natural erosion. But as he maneuvered deeper, something changed. The walls began to smooth, unnaturally so, as if carved intentionally. There were symbols too, barely visible under algae and time, but unmistakably human-like, not modern, primitive, old enough that even he couldn't place their origin. He hovered in place, scanning them. His pulse quickened. If this was what the old map hinted at, he was standing, well, floating, at the threshold of something never recorded, never shared. A place left behind by someone, or something, long forgotten. Moving further in, the passage widened. The flashlight's beam suddenly cut across a vast open space, its ceiling lost in shadows. A chamber. Cole's heart thumped once, hard. He had reached the submerged room. There was no current here, no sound. Even his own breathing seemed muffled. As he drifted forward, his light caught on something metallic, a glint, fleeting and unnatural, suspended in the stillness. He stopped. There, floating in the center of the room, was the crown. It hovered just above the water's surface, not touching it. No strings, no wires, no shelf or stand beneath it. It simply floated. Gold, aged but untarnished, with intricate inlays of what appeared to be deep blue gemstones. The metal looked older than anything Cole had ever seen, and yet it gleamed as if freshly polished. He blinked, leaned closer. His mind scrambled for an explanation. Magnetism? A trick of the light? He slowly surfaced, lifting his head from the water, mask dripping. The crown remained motionless, suspended there, defying gravity, waiting. Cole's instincts screamed at him to document it and leave. Take photos, alert his contacts, return with a team. But curiosity burned hotter. He'd uncovered fossils, ancient coins, tools from long-gone tribes, but never anything like this. This wasn't a remnant of man. This was an artifact with a presence. His hand rose without thinking. As he touched the crown, it trembled slightly, as if acknowledging him. Then, impossibly, it lowered onto his hand, light as a feather, warm to the touch. His breath came shallow now. Water rippled around him. Was it a hallucination? Nitrogen narcosis? No. He knew those signs. This was different. With trembling fingers, he slowly placed the crown on his head. Nothing happened at first. For a heartbeat, the silence stretched. Then the water erupted. A violent current tore through the chamber, spiraling around him like a vortex. The once still water turned dark, heavy, turbulent. It wasn't natural. It wasn't weather. It was like the cave itself had come alive, and it was angry. Cole was thrown back, slammed against the cave wall. He barely held on to consciousness as the pressure around him intensified. His oxygen tank was yanked to one side, threatening to dislodge. The light flickered wildly. Something was pulling him down. Not the water, not gravity. The crown. He clawed at his head, fighting to remove it, fingers slipping over its smooth ridges. The current shrieked louder, a terrible underwater scream that vibrated through his skull. With one last desperate tug, he yanked the crown off, and immediately the current stopped. Silence fell like a blanket. The crown slipped from his hands, floated back to its original place, and remained there, waiting again. Cole gasped for breath, heart pounding, lungs screaming. His light was cracked, oxygen half spent. He didn't wait. With a final glance at the hovering crown, he turned and swam back the way he came, every stroke a fight against the residual churn. By the time he burst back to the surface, the sky had darkened. Rain had started to fall. He hauled himself into the raft and lay there, gasping, staring up at the mist-covered trees. His hands were shaking uncontrollably. He hadn't imagined it. The crown had moved. The water had reacted. Something ancient was buried in that chamber, and it didn't want to be touched. Back at the cabin, he stripped off his gear in silence. Every muscle ached. His skin was bruised from the impact against the walls, but it wasn't pain that kept him awake that night. It was the realization that the crown was still there, hovering, waiting, and worse, he couldn't stop thinking about it. What was it doing there? Who left it? And why did it react so violently to him? He tried to write it off. Maybe it was some kind of ancient trap, a mechanism reacting to movement, or even a natural current misinterpreted under stress. But deep down, he knew better. There was something conscious down there. The next morning, Cole considered packing up, leaving the area, forgetting it all. But he also knew that if he didn't go back, and soon, someone else might. And they might not be as lucky. He began planning a second dive. This time he would bring more equipment, underwater cameras, a backup tank, a tether line. He also reached out, reluctantly, to someone he trusted. An old friend, Iris Vance, marine biologist turned freelance cave researcher. If anyone could make sense of the water's strange behavior, it was her. She wasn't local, but she owed Cole a favor, and when he told her, only partially, the details of what he'd found, she didn't hesitate. "I'm in," she'd said without missing a beat. "But if you're telling the truth, you should have never touched that thing." Cole couldn't argue. 2 days later, she arrived, gear in tow, eyes sharp and curious. As they prepped for the dive, Cole felt a weight lift. Someone else would see it. He hadn't lost his mind. But in the back of his mind, one question lingered like a whisper in the cold cave air. What if putting it on had changed something? Not in the water, but in him. Iris Vance didn't rattle easily. She'd spent the better part of her life in deep water, studying the migratory patterns of bioluminescent creatures, dissecting currents and aquatic anomalies across 5 continents. But even she was unnerved when Cole described the floating crown in detail, the hovering, the force, the way the water itself had turned hostile. She had come expecting exaggeration, or at the very least, misinterpretation. Yet when she saw the bruises on Cole's ribs and the haunted look in his eyes, she went quiet. They spent the evening reviewing equipment. Iris brought additional underwater sensors, electromagnetic field detectors, and a pair of rugged GoPro-style cameras with night vision capabilities. Cole patched his own damaged gear and laid out the route through the cave, using his notes from the first dive. There was no way to predict how the cave would behave again, if at all, but they weren't diving blind this time. At dawn, under misty skies, they returned to the hidden spring. Everything looked the same. That perhaps was the most unsettling part. The forest was calm, birds chirping. No signs of the rage that had surged beneath the surface just days before. Cole and Iris exchanged a glance. Words didn't need to be spoken. They dove together. The descent was slower, more calculated. Iris moved with the grace of someone used to navigating tight underwater spaces. She examined the walls, pausing to photograph the ancient carvings. Cole gestured toward the path ahead, to the part where the tunnel opened into the larger chamber. As they entered the vast room, Cole held his breath, and there it was, exactly where he'd left it. The crown hovered in the center of the flooded chamber, motionless, untouched. Iris stared at it for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached into her bag and pulled out a sensor wand, extending it toward the object. The moment the wand came within a foot of the crown, the device blinked red. She frowned behind her mask. Electromagnetic interference. Cole nodded grimly. He could have told her that. The two began recording footage, sweeping the room with lights and cameras. The water remained still, eerily so. No fish, no movement, no life, just the crown, floating like a thought suspended in a dream. Iris moved carefully around it, examining its composition. Her flashlight revealed more intricate details, fine etchings along the band, depicting strange animals and humanoid shapes twisted in abstract poses. Some seemed to be kneeling, others appeared to be reaching upward, worshipping. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Suddenly, a strange pulse passed through the water, a low thrum that vibrated through their chests. Both divers froze. Iris looked at her sensor. It had gone blank. Cole motioned to her. Time to go. But she didn't move. She was staring at something, behind the crown. Cole turned his light. There was a second shape, something half buried in the silt, protruding from the far wall. It looked like a door, not a natural formation, not rock, but carved, ornate, covered in similar symbols to the crown. At its center, a small depression in the shape of a perfect circle, a crown-shaped circle. Cole's stomach dropped. The crown wasn't just a relic, it was a key. Iris drifted closer, her fingers brushing the outline of the door. As she did, the crown trembled, and the water shifted, not violently, as before, but subtly, like it was inhaling, drawing them in. The temperature dropped several degrees. Cole grabbed her arm and signaled urgently, "Leave, now." They didn't argue. The return was a blur. Every sound seemed amplified, every movement watched. It wasn't fear of collapse or drowning. It was something else, as if they'd been seen. Back on the surface, they said nothing for several minutes. Just breathing, listening to the trees. Finally, Iris broke the silence. "That thing reacts to intent," she said. "You didn't imagine it. Whatever it's connected to, it knows when it's being approached." Cole nodded. "And it wants to be used." She looked at him sharply. "Or it wants someone to try." Over the next 2 days, they reviewed the footage and sensor readings. The crown was generating low-frequency vibrations. Not natural, possibly artificial, but unexplainable. The symbols matched no known civilization, no tribal record. The metal wasn't gold alone. It contained trace elements of something unidentified. Then came the question neither of them wanted to ask. Should they go back? Cole couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the crown's weight return to his head. Not heavy, but present. A whisper without sound. Iris wasn't immune either. She spent her nights analyzing the data, but something tugged at her focus. That door, the impression in the wall. If the crown fit, what would it unlock? They made their decision. A third dive. This time, Iris brought a tether system. They would secure themselves to an anchor near the chamber's mouth. If anything went wrong, anything, they could pull free. They reached the chamber faster. Everything was where it had been. Cole approached the crown, slow and deliberate. It didn't move. He didn't touch it. Not yet. Iris floated near the door, camera in hand, capturing every angle. She held up a second device, an underwater stylus, and gently traced the edges of the crown-shaped depression. Cole hovered nearby, tension in his chest. The moment she completed the tracing, the entire door shimmered. Not opened, but shimmered, as if acknowledging her touch. The crown tilted slightly, not toward the door, toward her. Cole yelled through his mask. The water surged, not an explosion, just a deep, sudden current that threw them apart. Iris slammed against the far wall. Cole's tether snapped. In the chaos, the crown lifted, suspended in the vortex of motion. And then, it moved, not slowly, deliberately, toward Iris. She screamed, bubbles and water, and pushed away as the crown inched closer. Cole fought to reach her, grabbing her suit and dragging her back toward the exit. The crown stopped inches from her face, as if testing her. She stared into it, shaking, frozen, and then it retreated, drifting back to the center of the chamber. They surfaced, gasping, coughing, shaking. Neither said a word for a long time. Back on land, Iris sat trembling, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. That thing, it chose not to do anything. It could have hurt me. It didn't. Cole lit a fire, staring into the flames. It was trying to measure you, see if you were the right one. For what? He didn't answer. The next day they sealed the site. No flags, no markers, just silence, for now. But Cole couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The crown had reacted to him, to her, to being approached again and again, as if something inside it had started to wake up. Some things, he began to believe, are meant to remain untouched. But that doesn't stop people from trying. And now, I want to hear from you. Would you have worn that crown? Or swam away the moment you saw it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think that crown really was? Also, tell us where in the world you're watching from. It's incredible how many different places these stories reach. If you're fascinated by mysterious discoveries and ancient secrets hidden beneath the surface, give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because what Cole and Iris found? It's only the beginning. 3 days after the last dive, Cole received a phone call that changed the tone of everything. It was from a contact in Charleston, Dr. Adrian Romer, a private researcher and former military contractor with expertise in ancient metallurgy and underwater archaeology. Cole had sent him a heavily redacted clip from one of their dive cameras, nothing that showed the crown in full, just a moment where the water pulsed in response to Iris tracing the outline in the stone. Adrian didn't ask many questions. He just said one word, "Where?" Cole hesitated. "This isn't something you just..." But Romer interrupted. "If what I'm seeing is real, this isn't just a lost artifact. It's a breach. Something from another timeline, maybe another civilization entirely. I'm coming. Don't go near it again until I do." He arrived 2 days later in an unmarked SUV, accompanied by 2 others. One was a sonar specialist named Nate, and the other a linguist from the University of North Carolina, Dr. Elise Harlan. She looked more curious than skeptical, but the tiredness under her eyes hinted she hadn't slept much since seeing the same footage. Cole led them to the spring in silence. Iris was wary. She didn't like bringing in outsiders, especially ones with military backgrounds and ambiguous motives. But Romer wasn't just any outsider. He'd funded digs in Iran, recovered sealed tombs in Indonesia, and had an uncanny ability to decipher myths before they'd been proven real. They all suited up. This time, the descent was coordinated. Romer had brought tech Cole had never seen, a sphere-shaped scanner capable of mapping spaces in real time using sound waves and a low-frequency EM pulse. It hovered like a robotic jellyfish as they moved, casting blue light across the walls. As they re-entered the chamber, the scanner lit up. Immediately, the signals warped. The machine began spinning, mapping erratically, its indicators flaring red and blue. Romer approached the crown. He didn't touch it. He just looked at it, measured it with his eyes. "It's reacting to magnetic presence," he said into the comm. "But there's no magnetism here. This field is artificial, probably generated from within. The metal has some kind of charge. It's repelling the natural force of gravity." Dr. Harlan was focused on the carvings. She drifted along the wall, tracing the symbols with her gloved hand, murmuring notes into her recorder. "These aren't hieroglyphs. They're a hybrid. I see glyphs similar to Proto-Sumerian. Here, but this?" She paused at one symbol. "This is Old Norse, and this one? Polynesian." "That's not possible," Iris replied. "Those cultures were thousands of miles and centuries apart." Harlan nodded, grim. "Exactly. This is either an elaborate hoax or something that rewrites everything." Nate hovered near the chamber's edge, watching the readouts. "There's a secondary structure behind that wall," he called. "We're getting bounce signals. Hollow space behind the stone. Something big. The door." Romer motioned to the crown. "That's the key, isn't it?" Cole didn't answer. Romer turned toward him. "You wore it." Cole's eyes narrowed. "How did you—" "The data. The residual field. It's tied to you now." The entire chamber seemed to pulse at those words. The water vibrated. Softly. Romer floated closer. You awakened something. That's why it's not reacting violently anymore. It's waiting. And if it's waiting, it means it expects more. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the chamber. Not like before, not mechanical or aquatic. A tone, low, deep, melancholy. The crown pulsed in sync. Elise backed up. It's emitting sound. Nate checked the scanner. Subsonic frequencies, way below human hearing, but it's measurable. Romer's eyes locked on the crown. We're opening that door. Iris objected immediately. That's insane. We don't know what's behind it. We barely survived the first contact. Romer looked at her calmly. Exactly. And we might not get a second chance. Cole said nothing. The decision had already been made. The next dive was scheduled for the following morning. This time, they brought a containment case. Lead-lined, pressurized, and designed to isolate electromagnetic discharge. The plan was simple. Lift the crown, place it in the case, carry it to the depression in the wall, and insert it. If the door opened, they'd record and retreat. But nothing about the crown was simple. Cole volunteered to do it. No one argued. He knew the crown. He had survived its first trial. And maybe it had marked him. He entered the chamber first, flanked by Iris and Romer. Elise and Nate remained at the mouth with the equipment, monitoring every shift. The crown hovered, still, unblinking. Cole approached, reached. The moment his fingers brushed it, the water hummed. The chamber brightened, ever so slightly, as if the rock itself had emitted light. He lifted the crown. No resistance this time. The object warmed in his hands, not burning, just alive. He floated toward the wall. Every diver in the room felt the change in pressure. The water pressed inward. The chamber's airlessness deepened. A silence beyond silence. Cole aligned the crown with the impression. It clicked. Not loudly, just enough. A sudden shockwave rippled out, pushing everyone back. The wall began to glow, symbols lighting up, crawling outward like veins of fire. Then, movement. The stone split at its center, not crumbling, but separating as if sliced by light. A long crack widened, revealing a void beyond, darker than dark, unlit, undisturbed. Everyone froze. The scanner shut down. Every light blinked out. Complete darkness. Only their oxygen tanks hissed. Then, the faintest shimmer emerged from inside the doorway, floating, just like the crown. Not metal, not stone, a shape. Romer raised his voice. Back. Everyone back. But Cole stayed. Something called him forward. A whisper, not with sound, but with memory. A sensation, as if the water around him wanted to show him something. Suddenly Iris grabbed him, pulled him hard. The shimmer inside the door shifted, retreated. The crown ejected from the wall, shooting back to its original position. The door sealed. Silence returned. No lights came on, but the crown hovered again, untouched. Cole and Iris surfaced first, gasping. Romer followed, shaking his head. That door's not mechanical. It's organic, responsive, sentient maybe. Elise was pale. We shouldn't have touched it. Romer removed his mask. We had to. Back at the cabin, the debate raged. What was behind the door? Was it a tomb, a vault, or something alive? Theories poured in, but nothing explained why the crown responded to Cole, or why it rejected Iris, and no one could explain what had shimmered in the dark. I've seen energy fields, Romer said, but never something that feels like it's looking back. That night, Cole sat alone on the porch, staring into the woods. The crown was still in the cave, waiting. He felt it, still watching him, still calling. Cole didn't sleep, not for hours, not after what they saw. Something had looked back at him from behind that door. It hadn't spoken. It hadn't moved like a living creature, but its presence was unmistakable, like a pressure behind his eyes, a sensation beneath his skin. The shimmer wasn't just light. It had intention. By morning, the group was restless. Romer had made dozens of notes, voice recordings, and sketches. Elise sat quietly at the table, flipping through her notebook, her mind trying to make connections between cultures that were never meant to meet. Polynesian, Norse, Akkadian, all inscribed into the stone as if they'd come from one source. The implications were staggering. It's a synthesis, she whispered, eyes wide. These aren't different cultures influencing each other. They're echoes of a single origin, repeated in fragments across time. Romer leaned forward. You're saying this predates all of them? I think this might be the origin. Cole stood by the window, arms crossed. He said nothing. Iris checked the scanner data again. There's something else down there. The shape behind that door, it's not just a chamber. It's structured, like a throne room or a tomb. That word hung in the air. Romer looked up. Or a prison. By noon, they agreed on one final dive, one last attempt to document the inner chamber. But this time, they'd bring a fiber optic probe. If they couldn't go in themselves, they'd at least see what was behind the door. Everything was set. The probe was small, snake-like, and equipped with infrared sensors and a live feed. They descended again. The water was different now, heavier. The silence had gained a pulse. As they entered the chamber, they immediately noticed it. The crown was missing. Gone. Iris checked the feed. Elise's voice crackled through the comm. No contact on the artifact. Cole scanned the area with his light. Nothing. The wall where the door had been was still sealed, but dimly glowing. Then they saw it. The crown was inside the depression, already in place. None of them had touched it. It had returned on its own. The door split open again. No sound, just darkness. Cole maneuvered forward and inserted the probe. At first, the image showed only swirling silt. Then, slowly, it cleared. The interior wasn't rock. It was smooth, metallic, ribbed with soft gold and deep green textures that didn't match any known alloy. The walls moved slightly, breathing almost, like the hull of a living machine. Then the camera panned forward and froze. There was a figure, seated, still. Its body was humanoid, but elongated, wrapped in a cloak that shimmered like liquid brass. The head was bowed, the hands resting on its knees, fingers long, almost root-like. The crown had once been on that head. Now it was gone. No movement, no response. Romer's voice was low. We're looking at a body. Elise spoke next. No, a guardian. Cole whispered. Or a prisoner. Then, without warning, the figure raised its head. Not fully, just enough to reveal eyes. But not human eyes, not animal. Glowing, iridescent, swirling with stars. The probe feed cut to black. All lights shut down. A deep tone filled the water. Not rage, not welcome. Just presence. The divers scrambled. Iris gripped Cole's arm, pulling him away. But Cole didn't move. He could feel something speaking, not in words, but directly to his thoughts. Images flashed through his mind. A ship sinking into an ancient ocean. Men in robes kneeling before the crown. A temple rising, then being swallowed by water. The crown drifting for centuries. Untouched. Searching. He heard one phrase over and over. You are not ready. He blinked, and it was gone. The chamber returned to silence. The door sealed again. The crown hovered in the center once more, waiting. They surfaced in chaos. Romer was silent, face pale. Elise muttered fragments of theories, ancient myths, impossible connections. Back at the cabin, Iris pressed Cole for details. What did you see? He hesitated. A warning. Romer finally spoke. It's not a crown, it never was. It's a key, yes, but not to power, to memory, or control. Or maybe even something worse. Worse than control? Iris asked. Romer looked at her. Obedience. They began searching through historical records. Elise contacted a former professor who specialized in pre-deluge mythology. The old man sent one cryptic message. Crown of Oans, lost to the sea of stars. Not meant for mortal minds. Romer closed his laptop slowly. Oans, that's Sumerian mythology. A god from the water who taught man language, science, and architecture. Cole rubbed his temples. So, what? That thing down there is a god? Elise corrected softly. Or the memory of one. Bound to protect the knowledge until someone worthy comes. And if no one ever is? Iris asked. Romer's voice was grim. Then it waits. Forever. The group fell into silence. By the end of the week, they agreed to seal the site. Romer made arrangements with private contractors to cover the entrance with boulders, and GPS coordinates were deleted. No records were shared. No agencies notified. Not because they didn't want credit, but because deep down, they knew. Some discoveries weren't meant to be revealed. Not yet, and maybe never. Cole stood once more by the water's edge, alone. The surface was calm, but beneath it, something ancient still stirred. The crown had chosen to return to the depths. Or perhaps it had only ever allowed them a glimpse, a test, before retreating back into shadow. Now, it waits again. And one day someone else may find it, but next time, it may not give the warning. So now I ask you, do you think what they found was truly ancient technology, or something beyond time itself? Let me know in the comments what you believe the crown really was, and what would have happened if they'd stepped through that door. And of course, tell us where in the world you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you want more discoveries like this, secrets from beneath the earth, relics that should have stayed buried, tap the like button and make sure you're subscribed, because what lies beneath never stays hidden forever. 2 months passed, the cave was gone, or rather, sealed beneath a calculated avalanche of stone and sediment, orchestrated by Romer's team with such precision that even satellite imaging couldn't distinguish the original entrance. Whatever was buried beneath the Appalachians would now remain hidden, unless someone knew exactly what to look for. Cole hadn't returned to the site since that last dive. He kept the coordinates, the notes, the recordings, all encrypted, all locked away. Sometimes he'd wake in the middle of the night, feeling the crown's weight again, not on his head, but deeper, like it had been etched into his thoughts. The memory didn't fade. If anything, it deepened. Iris left the area a week after the final dive. She didn't say goodbye, just packed and drove west. Her last message was short. Some doors aren't meant to be opened. Stay above the water. Romer vanished back into his world of private research and undisclosed facilities. Elise returned to academia, publishing a paper on mythological convergence in pre-cultural symbolism that caught minor attention, but she left out all references to the crown, the chamber, the being. No one ever mentioned the shimmering figure again, but none of them forgot, because the question had never been fully answered. What had they really found? And more importantly, why had it let them go? One theory came to Cole late one night as he watched footage from the probe, frame by frame. In one still, just one, he caught something he hadn't noticed before, reflected in the figure's eyes. Not a shape, a pattern. It looked like a map, but not of stars, of veins, like a living system, or a path. He tried to enhance it, overlay it on global satellite data, geological charts. Nothing matched, until he reversed the image and rotated it. Then he found something. 4 locations, each tied to ancient myths about crowns, or beings that rose from water-bearing knowledge. Lake Baikal in Siberia, the Mariana Trench in the Pacific, a flooded ruin off the coast of Malta, and one in the Amazon River basin, each with whisperings of similar artifacts, objects that glowed, sang, or floated just above water, none of them verified. But if the crown was a key, then maybe there were others. And if the being behind the door was a guardian, then maybe there were more doors. Cole closed the laptop. That was the moment he decided to disappear, not out of fear, but because he had to know. He couldn't walk away from it. Not now. He needed to find out whether the crown was one of a kind, or just one piece of a global puzzle that had remained hidden for millennia. But he didn't share his plans. Not with Iris, not even with Romer. He simply left, and no one's heard from him since. His cabin was found empty. No signs of struggle, no gear missing. The only thing left behind was a single note, scrawled in rough pen on the inside cover of a field journal. Some truths are buried to protect the world, others to protect the ones who find them. If I don't come back, don't come looking. The cave remains sealed, but occasionally, hikers in the area report strange things. Sounds like voices underwater, a deep humming near the stone basin, the sudden, untraceable feeling of being watched. One ranger said he saw something gold glinting just beneath the surface. He didn't investigate. Not everyone's a treasure hunter, and maybe that's a good thing. Because some discoveries, no matter how tempting, aren't meant to be disturbed. They aren't gifts, they're warnings. And the deeper you go, the more likely it is you'll find something staring back. So now I'll ask you, if you had found that floating crown, would you have worn it, or would you have left it where it was, untouched, unanswered? What do you think was behind that door? A prison? A portal? Or the last remnant of a forgotten god? Write your theories in the comments. I want to hear what you think. And while you're there, tell us where in the world you're watching from. It's always amazing to see just how far these mysteries travel. If you found this story gripping, eerie, and unforgettable, make sure to like this video. Subscribe for more strange disappearances, ancient secrets, and stories that push the boundaries between history and myth. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because the next story might be the one that changes everything you thought you knew about our world. After all, some mysteries don't wait to be found. They find you.